Hi folks, it's time for another look at a fictional religion, and today we're looking at one that is found in the Fallout series of games, and it's possibly the fastest growing religion in its post-apocalyptic world. Today we're talking about the Children of Atom. Here of course is your obligatory spoiler warning if you need to duck out. Before we look at the church itself, we need to quickly explain the setting of Fallout, and that means it is time for Cask Theology to delve into the realms of alternate history. Now don't panic Cody, I'm not staying long. But to talk about today's topic, we have to talk about an alternate timeline, so here goes. As always, this video is not sponsored by Vault-Tec, but it's sponsored by you, so nuke that like button if you enjoy this thing. We start our journey on a planet Earth that's pretty much the same as the one that we're aware of, but the timeline splits somewhere in the 20th century-ish, probably. So imagine a world that is very similar to ours, but also very different. World War II still happens, the atomic bomb still gets created, and it gets used, but the aftermath of the events is quite a bit different. This is a world of atomic cars and household robots, but a world that discovered how to create the electronics that we use every day, such as the phone that you might be watching this on, much later in their timeline, having of course focused on how to get the most out of nuclear energy. Because of this, culture had become sort of stagnant after the 1950s. This was a world that was the same as those envisioned by shows like The Jetsons or any 1950s science fiction. This of course includes the misconceptions about atomic power that we had in the early days, like the 1950s, but in this universe they are actual side effects of it. So yeah, that's right, in this universe the laws of nature are very similar as well, but also very different. Because in this world, giant atomic ants are an actual possibility. But much as in our timeline, this is not a perfect world. Conflict between the East and the West plays out in a similar manner to our timeline, and the tensions between capitalism and communism still plague them. It seems that even in this universe we still can't get on. The real backstory about what we're about to cover are the events of the early 21st century, where the world was in conflict over running out of fossil fuels. Communism and capitalism are still duking it out via the two great superpowers, who are the USA and China. Their Cold War soon turned warm, and pressure built and built and built until one day, in 2077... Oh my God! Skip forward a couple of hundred years and wait for all that nuclear dust to settle, and we come to the subject of today. For it was not just the nation states or the old ways of life that changed in the event that they call the Great War, religion did too. Just as the old cities had gone and new settlements arrived, so did religions. And this brings us to our topic, the post-war religion simply known as the Church of the Children of Atom. So where did this religion come from? Well, who founded it is a fact that's lost to time, but its origins lie not too long after the Great War had ravaged the world. And the religion's birth is also tied to a place, the town of Megaton. Now the town and the religion go hand in hand. The site of Megaton, a place where a bomb had landed but not exploded, had been used as a place for traders to meet for years, and had become regarded as a holy site by the newly formed cult of Atom, who worshipped that unexploded bomb that sat in the crater. Both groups saw it as beneficial to work together, and soon a small settlement around the bomb began to form, and eventually growing into a big town which they then fortified from bits of old aircraft that they found lying around. Safe from the dangers of the outside world, the church also now got itself a building to meet in so it could practice its faith in safety. As time went by, the fortunes of the religion changed for the better, attracting new converts quickly, and eventually we get to the first player interaction with the Children of Atom in 2277 in the game Fallout 3. Now by this point, the church is a permanent feature in Megaton and is led by the charismatic leader known as Confessor Cromwell, who can be heard preaching in the radioactive water that still surrounds that unexploded bomb. Around the same time, the Children of Atom were seeking to expand their faith across the world, with some heading north hundreds of miles and settling in Boston in an area now called the Commonwealth. Some would even travel even further, to the island of Far Harbor, who would be met by the player character in Fallout 4, which is set about a decade after the events of Fallout 3. As we can interact with both groups, we are able to actually glean their theology from conversations with them, and thankfully they're very open about talking about their faith, and from here we can get to the meat of things, what these guys actually believe. To start off, this is a monotheistic religion, as it worships a singular deity that is known as Atom. Atom is a creator deity, and uses destruction to create, with the ultimate form of destruction and creation, of course, being the act of fusion or fission, an act which actually creates a brand new universe. The Church believes that every atom contains the potential to create a new universe, only released when the atom is broken to pieces. So much like with a chain reaction, a ton of atoms being broken apart will create many, many new universes, creation begetting creation. So the Great War of 2077 was actually an act of divine intervention by Atom. Atom created billions upon billions of new universes with all the atoms that were getting split in the 2-hour-long skirmish. This breaking apart of atoms that the Church calls division is worshipped as the method by which Atom creates wonders and new universes. This can either be in a short burst, such as an atomic explosion, or the decay of an element over time, as in the case of radiation. Radioactive sites are therefore seen as patches of holy ground to the Church of Atom, as they stand on a place where Atom is slowly generating universes through the slow decay of atoms. They refer to it as glow, which is a visible example of Atom's creative power. Cleaning up radiation is therefore seen as working against him and is also blasphemous. And they're also not fond of irradiated humans, such as ghouls, probably because they did not die in the Great Atomic Blasts, and therefore stifled Atom's creation. Members of the Church will therefore seek out places that are covered in radiation, as those decaying atoms will split and change the atoms of the believers, and in turn create new universes. Standing in his glow merely helps Atom create new universes from the atoms of a believer. And while the ultimate act of creation would be to die in an atomic explosion, the next best thing is to die in a radioactive site where all your atoms can still slowly be split and converted into new worlds. The next question, of course, is what else are they doing while they're sitting in this radioactive muck? Thankfully, there are many believers who are more than happy to let you observe what they're getting up to or ask them questions about their faith. The religion does have an evangelical element to it, or to put it in plain language, they will try to convert people to their faith. The religion does have a kind of loose structure to it. There is often a person in charge who is known as either a mother or a confessor, and they will preach to the faithful and guide that particular group. Then there is the more militant arm, who are known as zealots, and they are there for the defence of the church, and they're usually overseen by a grand zealot, who is often the confessor's right-hand man. For the most part, the children of Atom do not act in a violent manner, preaching to people in a traditional manner as we see in Fallout 3. There are, however, factions who believe in a more proactive approach to try and speed up Atom's creative process, and they do that by shooting at people with weapons that utilise radiation. Generally though, the children of Atom are a peaceful lot, content to sit in their radioactive puddles and pray to their god for division. They generally reject materialism and belongings as well. After all, their main goal is to have their atoms split in twain, and generally their belongings won't help them to do that, unless of course said belonging is a mini-nuke. As time went on, the church began to find an artistic outlet for their beliefs, and they started creating banners depicting the traditional depiction of an atom. These patterns also begin to form the basis of the tattoos that many members of the church started to sport, and the various bits of jewellery that they wear are made from bits of old scrap metal that also look like atoms. There is also a mystical element to the Church of Atom's beliefs, and they hold such things as visions, signs and miracles as all coming from Atom. There are some in the faith who find they have a natural resistance to the harm that is caused by radiation, which they believe is a blessing from Atom. They don't begrudge the followers that do not have this gift though, and those that have to use anti-radiation medication, because they see it as merely getting another chance to get divided. Some members of the church are recipients of trippy visions, which again are seen as messages from Atom. One such vision that is reported by the branch on the island of Far Harbour claim that many of their members have seen the Mother of the Fog, who is a mysterious, ghostly woman who guides those who follow Atom. I suppose now is a good time to look at the similarities between the children of Atom and the religions in our timeline. Now, given the setting of a world that never really moved on culturally from the 1950s, it would not be a great stretch to say that one of the biggest influences on this religion would be Christianity. Now, it's clear that the old world's gone, but it didn't entirely disappear, as ideas and stories from before the war have been passed on through the generations. Certainly the Children of Atom would have had some sort of loose template to build on. It's a monotheistic religion. Some practices such as prayer, and even the word church may have come from recollections of what religions looked like before the war. In the beginning of Fallout 3, James, your father, shares your mother's favourite Bible verse with you, and considering that these two did not grow up in a vault away from the war, this shows that there are still Bibles lying around out there in the wasteland. The Christian influence is also backed up by the presence of St Monica's Catholic Church in Rivet City, where your parents lived before the events of the game. The obsession with the atom and atomic power that the old world may have had would obviously have fed into the formation of this religion too. After all, the symbol of the atom and atomic bombs are on all those old posters that are littered across the wastes. So it could be that all these echoes from the past informed those who first professed faith in Atom. One of the religions we know continued to be practiced after the Great War of 2077 was that of Mormonism. We know this because it features in the Fallout New Vegas DLC. Now, the idea of your atoms going on to create thousands of new universes after being split could actually have been influenced and adapted from some bits of Mormon theology. Notably, the bits of theology where the faithful will go on to rule worlds of their own. Interestingly, the Church does not really teach anything about an afterlife, in keeping with its teaching that humans are merely just shells that contain infinite worlds. But it does profess the concept of an infinite multiverse, so it could be said that its outlook is somewhat pantheistic. Atoms, of course, are in everything, and through the atom's division, new worlds and universes where new atoms come into being. So, stepping back a bit out of in-game lore, what might have inspired the Church of the Children of Atom may have been one of the many great post-apocalyptic movies and books and stories that the developers themselves drew on. After all, the leather armour and recurring canine companion Dogmeat in all of Fallout games are inspired by Mad Max. Years back, some folks on Reddit have actually theorised that the idea for the Children of Atom may have come from the movie Beneath the Planet of the Apes, because in this instalment of the series, the characters stumble across a group that worships a large, undetonated bomb. Well then, that's the theology of the Children of Atom. What do you think of them? Leave a comment if you like, or click on the video that YouTube reckons that you're going to like next. In any case, I'm off to go and find some Radaway, so until next time, go grab yourself a Nuka-Cola and keep asking questions.